All right, hey traders, TG here, and let's see. I just finished teaching a class Saturday about basically this market, what's going on, the short side, what we're seeing with the market turning down, how to take advantage of that, and then also, even if you didn't want to trade short this time around, but going forward, if we see that the market's going to roll down again, or if you're looking at individual names, the whole class is about trying to make sure that you can see that coming and then the other side of this knowledge, we have it right here on the Profit Pilot website. But the other side of this knowledge is that you now know how to not get into basically what's a bounce and a downtrend. So I know some of our long setups can look like they are a bullish setup, but really it's just a bounce and a downtrend, and the trade might work out for a little bit, but then it's going to run into resistance, roll over hard, and you might be left scratching your head, being like, "What just happened?" So there's a lot of education that I put into this thing. I think it's also important for you guys to recognize like when something is in a downtrend and not to keep trying to buy into it, even though the setup might be working. You need to see the greater context of the picture. So we spent, I think it's going to be about 4.5 hours by the time we take the breaks out of it. We just did that Saturday. It's pre-recorded. You guys can fast forward through it. I got all the slides and a whole bunch of information in there. So now that it's been recorded and evergreened, if you guys are interested in purchasing it, you can come check it out here. It's the Moxie Indicator Breakout Strategy class, and that's where you can find some information. So we just put a link to all of this in the chat. So that's where we're going to be going with that. All right, then let's get to the market. And get up here and see we got a question. And Loco no Joker, nice, 81% already, and we're only in like the second month. That's pretty good. So where we're at with the SPY, I assume you trade options because taking advantage of where the price isn't going. I know that some of my subscribers, I've been talking about the DKS trade, and some of them have been taking selling calls and actually capturing some of the theta that way. So that is one benefit of working with options as opposed to waiting for the market to kind of move, because clearly we've been seeing that the market is just mostly sideways right here. Hang on a second. So that's kind of where we're at on that one. Is clearly the market's been just chopping like this. Now we do have the FOMC minutes today. So remember that they had their closed door emergency meeting on Monday, which was Valentine's Day, and I would imagine they're talking about the hot inflation number that we got out last week. So we're going to see what kind of fireworks that might create today in the markets. So obviously price rate today, we were looking at this. I was like, yeah, I think we're going to be going up and down. We were a little overextended to the downside. What was that, Monday, like Friday, Monday? And then yesterday we kind of ended with a gap here between price and the 15-minute 50. But still, everything is looking fairly bearish here. This really just kind of looks like a bear flag waiting for price to go lower. I think that at least price probably needs to come down here and retest the low area. I just don't think that this thing looks like it's ready to resume any kind of uptrend. So when the market starts rocking and rolling to that direction, it will be pretty strong for the rest of the stocks out there. The part of the class that I taught on Saturday was how to recognize relative strength. Like not everybody's interested in trading the short side. It can be a little bit tricky. And the correction doesn't always last very long. Like the market might only be doing this for 3, maybe 4 months. Who knows? This year, I think, has been pretty unique to where we've been seeing since February 2021. We've been seeing a lot of names starting to move down. So there has been a bear market going on in individual names and individual sectors, despite what the indexes have been masking. And so if you guys are interested in only going long, then I was teaching a way to kind of notice and look at and find relative strength compared to what the market's doing. And so it'll be really interesting in the next few weeks if the market comes down here, makes equal low, or actually makes a new low, to see what kind of names hold up. And those should be the leaders when the market stops going down. So very excited to be watching this over the next few weeks, because this doesn't happen too often. The market doesn't get this kind of pullback too often, like once every year or two or something like that. And so what we're looking at, as I said, price coming back down to the previous low. I've been calling right about here. We did that as a pretty perfect short for that one. Like saying, hey, that was the CPI numbers, and just based on even the technicals of saying, yeah, that's about a place to roll over. So we're just kind of hanging out, waiting for this thing to go. And then if we look at the IWM over through here, and we're just kind of waiting for this one too. So it's been running into the hourly 200. It looks like it's fairly weak to me. We're just kind of waiting for it to do its thing. It looks again just like a bear flag like that. And the question is, when's it going to go? Now, remember, I do think that the IWM, kind of bring this over here, I think that the IWM could make its way all the way down to the weekly 200. So I'm kind of eyeing that to see if that's really actually a possibility. It's going to be pretty crazy if it does, but I think that that is definitely the weaker of the indices, and so kind of curious to see if that's what's going to be happening. Another one that we talk about, the UVXY, and what I've been noticing is that this daily chart sure looks like it is getting ready to go up again. It looks like it's building a base. So we can see that we do have a higher low. So that's kind of the first thing. And then what I've been noticing is price has really been staying nice and tight around here. And we have the 8 back over the 21. So it looks kind of primed and ready. And then we had a nice pullback into the hourly 50 with the Moxie indicator above 0. That also looks pretty good, very similar to what we had back here. And then what I'm also seeing is that we have the hourly 200, which is kind of starting to make an uptrend. Whereas before, you can see that the hourly 200 was still kind of in a downtrend. So even the overall trend as viewed from the moving averages like that, I am seeing like, okay, this thing has been going sideways to up long enough that it's starting to turn these longer term moving averages. So we'll see if the FOMC minutes today get anything going. And then also, yeah, it might also be a little bit of talk about the Olympics. Maybe the powers that be want to kind of keep things cool until after the Olympics. We don't really want the market to be melting down while all the eyes are on the Olympics. So that could be a little bit of a theory out there too. All right, so let's see what you guys are looking at. Venus, CGC, the cannabis stuff. I don't know. I'm still not quite on them yet. You could see last time it kind of ran into the daily 50. It wasn't quite ready. This time it looks like they're warming up a little bit. So what I really want to see is how these things hold up after what I believe is going to be the next leg down in the market. I'm not interested in taking the CGC or cannabis or basically stocks that I see like this yet, because they aren't quite in an uptrend. They are coming off the bottom, but they haven't convinced me of any uptrend yet, because again, the hourly 200 is still in a downtrend. The daily 50 is still basically in a downtrend, and price has only reached it. I would like to really see price get over the daily 50, and I'd like to see the daily 50 in an uptrend. I'd like to see all this stuff in an uptrend. So I kind of see what you're looking at. There does look like there's some activity, but it's still very early, and they could continue to kind of bump along the bottom there for a while. Let me see what the weekly, and then this is kind of the other thing. If we look at the history, because here it has been down for so long, there's a very wide distance between that 8 and 21. And while there can be moves like what you can see back here before, those moves are going to be running into resistance because the moving averages are still in downtrends. This thing is still in a downtrend. You don't get a real move until you can see these moving averages all starting to turn up. Notice that the 8 crossed over the 21. So while there could be moves, like, if you're interested, if you can play that, or if you can play something like that, yes, there can be moves, but that is not a trend. The trend has not changed. So the most that I could say that you'd be looking for again is just something like this, but just realize that as you are moving up, you are going to eventually be running into some resistance, and you're going to have to time that right, because otherwise you can see how price gets rejected again. We are not, and nor are we setting up currently for an uptrend like this to where you can buy it and pullbacks are buyable. That's not the situation. I think Tilray is going to look pretty much the same. It's a little bit flatter, but you can see the same thing. That weekly chart looks awfully similar. And yeah, same thing on the daily. They're trying, okay, but it just, again, context. You got to understand that, yeah, maybe these things are going to come off the bottom a little bit, but they're not They're not really in long trends. All right, so let's see. CRSR. Is that Corsair, I think? Yeah, Corsair. The same kind of deal as Tilray and Cannabis. Like they're look at this. They look very similar, don't it? You can see, yes, it's trying. It has made more progress. It's past the weekly 21, whereas before it had not. But I view this as basically a bounce off of the lows. And typically, what I see after that is some sort of pullback, and then maybe we'll get another move. So I would just kind of from what I'm seeing on this perspective, I would say that this is a move off the low, but I don't think that it's going to go very far before it runs into resistance and it's likely to pull back to retest the low for support, and then you'll have to see if it can go back up. And if we look here on the lower time frames, it's just, yeah, there are moves and you can catch these, but it's not really an uptrend as far as, like a real definition of an uptrend. They have some trends on the lower time frames, but I think ultimately these things are going to run into resistance. They're going to pull back pretty significantly. And then maybe on that pullback, then we can look again to see if there is a more robust trend. The other thing that I'm seeing currently on Corsair is that it's running into the third ATR on the daily chart, which is typically resistance. So do be careful about that. Yes, there was a move off the low, but I don't think right here is a good place to be buying or adding. I think actually, if I were in this, I would be taking profits with the expectation that there's probably going to be a pullback at some point. But yeah, you were saying the Moxie indicator was spot on. So yeah, if you look here, that was actually a trampoline move that set this up. So kind of like a double bottom, and then you have the trampoline move because price below the 50, but the Moxie indicator above 0 is a trampoline move. And then for the 15-minute time frame, you can see price got over the 15-minute 50 and the 15-minute 200. The Moxie indicator was nice and tight, and you could at least see there was a move there. And then again, price bounced off the 15-minute 50 there, and that was all working out, and that there was some positive divergence right there. So yeah, if you guys are nimble and you want to be playing these things lower down, by all means, but they're just bounces off the lows. They are not in full-blown uptrends yet. And Disney short, gee, I don't think yeah, I wouldn't try that. I think this one seems as though it is trying to put in a bottom, and again, like the other ones, it may not be in an uptrend yet, might not be in a full uptrend, and it's likely to pull back in order to start building an uptrend. But I think it would be risky to try and play that pullback because I think this thing is actually really trying to move to the upside. And so while you might be correct at some point about a pullback, it might also like to really start turning the other way. And I don't really see anything convincing enough right now to say, hey, this thing's ready to pull back. I could see that, yes, there's a gap between price and the moving average. Maybe it's coming into a double top. Yes, there's a gap here too, but there's nothing that says, hey, this thing is ready to short. A short would be something like that. That's pretty easy to notice. And then a long is like that, which is also pretty easy to notice. I just don't really see anything to do right here. Yeah, there's basically nothing to do here. I wouldn't want to short it, and I would wait for a pullback in order to then go long. So yeah, something like this, I think just wait. Michael, consider a trend change in MJ. It's probably going to be the same answer as CGC and yeah, Tilray. They're going to be the same. So they are maybe working themselves off the floor, but I don't see anything yet. I'd want to give a little bit more time, a little bit more construction, and I think that there has already been a move, and I would like to wait for the next move. And then Zach, I'm not going to reference Nugget, but I will reference GDX because I don't want to study a leveraged ETF of another ETF that's trying to mimic an ETF. I rather look at the original ETF. And so I'm going to look at GDX. And if you want the leverage, then you just buy Nugget. So that's how I work with that. So because Nugget is trying to mimic itself from GDX. Now I tried trading GDX and some of the gold stuff a little while ago. And then the FOMC came out and said some stuff, and it made the dollar go all crazy, and it made gold go all crazy. So I kind of backed away from that for now. The only thing I'm kind of noticing for GDX that makes me like, maybe there's another opportunity coming down the road at some point, is that price is probably going to find some resistance here at the daily 200. Just kind of my thought. So again, I'm not sure I'd like to initiate a trade right there, especially since this has already kind of moved a while. I think I'd much rather see if there's some sort of pullback, and then you can go like that and maybe start looking for, an entry down there on that pullback, because typically I don't see price just, being able to cross straight up through there. You can see, generally speaking, the 200 has been resistance. And so let's look for a pullback into strength, and then there might be another move to the upside on that. All right, then COMT. Let me get over here on the weekly and the daily. It's been nice for now, but let's see. So again, it's been a good trade. Look at this, how nicely it's been following the hourly 50. So that's been pretty good. But as far as the daily and weekly, it's coming right here. Looks like a previous resistance level. Just kind of look at it. You say, hey, there are a lot of trades, a lot of congestion over there. Maybe it's likely to pull back. It's done a pretty good job running the third ATR, which makes me a little bit nervous to want to initiate a trade up there at the third ATR, because oftentimes the third ATR is kind of where price will, that's an extension. It's pretty heavy up there. It's like, okay, it's really reached an outer boundary, and oftentimes it's going to pull back. So again, I'd love to look for an opportunity with this. I wouldn't want to start here as far as an entry goes. Now, if you're in this, hey, keep trailing up your stops. As long as price continues to follow these moving averages, then great. But I would generally be looking for some sort of pullback, probably, ideally, if you can get a pullback to that daily 50, that would be incredible. That would be real nice, because right now you have price trying to move up across a downtrending moving average, and that doesn't usually go well. At some point, it's going to want to pull back and test that moving average for support. Zach, you can just scan for that. So how do you find the new highs versus new lows? Nothing. I'm sure Thinkorswim has that. I don't know what the particular ticker for that is. Stock Charts actually has a really good one. So if you go over to Stock Charts and you load their charts, they have some predefined stuff, and it's great. The view is great, and so I would go over there. You can also, as I said, just Google it and kind of get some stuff. Let's see, WDC. Put, I don't know, it's kind of just choppy, you know. So also, Chad, you were asking about COMT. Here's another reason why, WDC is showing me another reason of like why I wouldn't want to be going long COMT right now, because you can see WDC was also at that third ATR, and then you can also see how price at least wanted to pull back to the daily 50. Now it went well below the daily 50, but at least went back to it. So that's why I'm saying that your COMT kind of looks like it's up here, and I was saying, hey, it should also move down here. It might go further, but it looks to me like it should pull back at some point. And then as far as this WDC, there's really, I don't have a clear picture. Maybe, I know you're looking for a put. That's a tough one too. I'm seeing some positive divergence, and it looks like it's trying to put in those double bottoms. But if it comes up here into the underside of that hourly 50, or sorry, the daily 50, and the underside of the hourly 200, if it starts to roll over, then yes, maybe you can get some traction on the put side. But so far, it's still going up. So you're going to have to wait to figure out when this thing really wants to turn over. So kind of like back here, you can see how price got rejected by the daily 50, and then started to roll over. That's not quite happening yet. You do have price up at the underside of the daily 50, but it hasn't turned yet. So unless you want to start loading up as it moves up in the anticipation of it rolling over, it hasn't quite convinced me or even confirmed that this thing is ready to kind of turn over, even though it might. And then Moxie and lower time frames, 30 or 1 hour. Well, I don't use the 30-minute for the Moxie indicator. I use the 60-minute, and then I also use the 15-minute. And for for the 15-minute, I have a 15-minute high, which is slower but stronger, and that goes with the higher time frame charts. And then I have a 15-minute low, and that goes for, it's more nimble but not as strong, and it goes for the lower time frame charts, like if you want to be day trading or short-term trading. Austin, let's see, TIGR. Uh, Again, I know a lot of these things are down on the bottoms, and there can be some moves, but I don't quite see things that I really want to be tackling yet. The only thing that I could kind of talk about that's positive for Tiger is that it has held the hourly 50, whereas before it did not hold the hourly 50, multiple times before. So it is a character change. That is something to be noticed. That yes, it is starting to hold moving averages, but that doesn't mean it has to going forward. And it also seems as though you got some conflicting angles. Again, you have the price trying to go up across a downtrending moving average. You've got a very, very wide 8 and 21 on the weekly. So you've got a lot of work to do before this thing really starts an uptrend. So if you do try and tackle these, just realize you're kind of working against the grain, and that typically speaking, at some point when you get these moves, they're gonna get rejected because they're still dealing with overhead resistance. They're still dealing with downtrending moving averages, and it's not going to be the easiest or the cleanest. So find the opportunities, take them. They will probably be shortly lived, and just make sure you realize what kind of resistance that price might be moving up into, so that you don't get surprised when they turn right it back around. Because like look at this, you could say right here, oh yeah, look at that price hit. Was holding the hourly 50, and you did get a move up, but then look how strong that pullback was, that move back down. That's my concern, is that if you don't quite get these things right, you might take a trade and it works for a minute, but then the next thing you know, it's right back down to the other side. And that's because it's not done going down, or hasn't really started a legitimate uptrend. And so it's going to be bouncing around for a while. All right, Rob, if we look at IWM, see the weakness in the IWM, and the 15-minute lines are getting closer. When the lines get closer on the 15-minute Moxie, or what are you personally looking for usually? Let me get over here so we can get the 15s. So yeah, I really view this as a bear flag, because it just doesn't look very strong, and typically, the hourly 200 is the overall trend. We also still have a downtrending daily 50, and the Moxie indicator is below zero, and this really just looks super choppy. This doesn't look very constructive to the upside. And there were a couple moves like right here where we had a little bit of strength, but again, it ran right into overhead resistance and then got knocked down again. So for now, we're just seeing a whole lot of oscillating, a lot of chop. And I am actually looking at this saying, I'm not sure price is going to be able to get much higher than this. Partly because of that hourly 200, partly because of a previous price. I don't think it's going to be making new highs. And so I'm actually going to be watching the Moxie indicator to see if this thing wants to roll over the other side. For now, it's really kind of less about the Moxie indicator right now, just because we are in chop. It's more about moving averages. It's more about the context of the overall time frame in the charts. Like, just look, you're running into the hourly 200 of a higher time frame. And so moving averages are a help, but otherwise, it's just chop. We're just in chop until it really picks a direction. Uh, let's see. Yeah, Loco no Joko. I don't know. I've got a couple things here and there. I'm short the IWM, so that's one of the trades that I'm looking at, and then I'm kind of interested in shorting the semis. So I'm looking towards just the overall indexes and seeing if that there can be some clean moves at some point there. Again, not quite sure when that's going to happen. We have the FOMC minutes today, and then we have the Olympics, and that might be a thing for later. Let's see, Michael. Yeah, let's go to Apple. Used Moxie to buy puts on Apple because I used the 15-minute chart and saw there was resistance at the 200 moving average. Where do you think Apple will go from here? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, Michael, good job. That was perfect. I've been describing to my subscribers over in the Moxie room about Apple short. I was calling it short all the way back here and all the way here, and then again here, and that's been working out beautifully. And what we can see here is we had an inverse trampoline move. So that is when price is over the 50, but the Moxie indicator is below zero. So that's been working. And then, yeah, this last bounce was right into the underside of the hourly 50. And then it was also right into the underside of the 15-minute 200. So again, chop. We're in chop. I think that these things will eventually resolve lower, but the question is when. So if you guys are going to be buying options or selling options, make sure your time horizon is correct, because we may not know. And I do have, I don't know where this is necessarily go, but I do have a professional trader friend that he and I talk a lot. He's kind of projecting that Apple could go down to 150. Okay, that's a possibility. I don't have a super strong conviction on anything with this stuff, but I can tell you, since Apple is the market and the market is Apple, if Apple goes all the way to 150, the market the market's going to be making new lows. That would actually still be a new low for Apple. And so yeah, if that's a target that my buddy's looking at, that could be some serious downside for the market. And I wouldn't necessarily object to that. I do think that the market is eventually going to resolve lower. I just kind of want to see when that's going to happen. Let's see, TGT target. Yeah, I mean, look at these things. You want love this. Look at this. When did this start? This started with an inverse trampoline move right there. Price should not be over the 50 if the Moxie indicator is below 0. Guys, if you don't have the Moxie indicator, it's stuff like this that will save your bacon when you have the Moxie indicator, because you realize, like, oh, even though price was over that daily 50, but you should be looking at that Moxie indicator and it's telling you, I am so far below 0, this thing's not going to be working out, and price should not be over the 50 if the indicator is below 0. So that's giving you a real big heads up not to get suckered in long on something like that. And then we could even see here, these were clear. I mean, gosh, if I only traded targets, usually not a thing that's on my list. That was a clear downtrend. That was a nice bear flag running right into the underside of the moving average. The Moxie indicator super far below 0. Good stuff there. Really good stuff. And then just kind of like what I was talking about with IWM, I think it was mostly just IWM, you can see price continues to follow these moving averages to the downside. Any bounce got shorted into. So, I look at this and I'm like, yeah, the market's pretty rough out there. And I think that it's a matter of time until the indexes catch up with stocks like this. So that's why I'm pretty negative on the market right now. Yeah, Rob, usually the FOMC is 2 hours before the market closes. So 11 a.m. Pacific time should be right. Yeah, Loco no Joko, no problem. Let's see. How do you build your watch list? Yeah, so I do tend to work on tickers that aren't the big popular ones, kind of because the big popular ones don't move as much as I want them to do, since I trade just stock. And so I look for the leveraged ETFs, like the TZA or the SPXS or the SOXS. That I do that, like Nugget also for GDX. And then I look for stuff that's kind of just high beta, whether it's positive or negative. And honestly, I've just been building a list for years that whenever I hear other traders or people talk about things, if it looks interesting to me, I'll just add it to my list. And then I just scan. I have the Moxie indicators that I scan with. They show me inverse trampoline moves, regular trampoline moves, price triggers, positive, negative, and then I just build it. And a lot of times I just keep my ear to the ground, and I hear about tickers that people are talking about. And if people are talking about it, then there's maybe a reason to be trading it, and I add it to my list. So yeah, just kind of keep an ear out there. Yeah. So when does PayPal become interesting again to the long side? Probably not a long time. That's going to be a while. That is a broken chart, and that's going to take a while to fix. So even if there are up moves, they are not going to be uptrends. This is going to take a long time to fix, because if we even look at that thing. This is broken, and it's going to take a long time to fix that. And if you want to see how long it takes to fix something like that, go look at Baba, Baidu, go look at those things. Look how long some of these things will just bump along the bottom. Somebody was asking me about Groupon, GRPN. Look how long that stock, it's bounced around, but it just can't really get anywhere. So yes, there are tradable moves if you're nimble, but it's not really going anywhere. So yeah, PayPal, Square, like, it's gonna be a long time. It's gonna be a long time. So don't be careful. Just understand what you're playing with on something like that. Even Carvana, these things are rough. They're real rough. But yeah. So guys, if you're interested, if you like kind of how I talk about this stuff, as I said, I just finished teaching a class. It was about 4.5 hours. I know that sounds like a lot, but also you get a lot. You get a lot. And I go through a ton of stuff. I show you just chart after chart after chart about how this stuff works, how I see it. I point everything out. I go definitely into detail. I talk about my process for trading in a day. I go through the Moxie watch list. I give out some watch list tickers. I mean, it's just from, soup to nuts on this stuff. And then I even show at the end, I go over a ton of tickers at the end from 2018. I use the on demand feature from Thinkorswim. And I go back there and I just show, hey, how do we find stocks that are going to be good when the market's done doing all this crazy action? Like when the market finally rights itself, how do we find the good ones? And basically it's relative strength. And what does that look like? And that's the kind of stuff that I spend several hours going into, and we had a pretty full class. So a lot of people asked me questions, and those questions are probably some that you guys would ask. And so this isn't just like a one-way thing. I don't just, talk for hours. Actually, it's very interactive. Questions are asked, and I think that helps really suss out people's questions and soft spots. So yeah, thanks guys for checking this out. Come over here, see if you like the class, and yeah, until next week, we'll see you Wednesday. Thanks again, everyone.